Big week in international affairs, hasn't it? Summit season into full swing. COP's still underway over in Egypt. ASEAN and the G20, of course, are now complete. And the world leaders are heading down to Thailand for APEC. All the while, war is raging in Ukraine. Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian, joins me now for a wrap of what's been a busy week, as I said. Greg, let's start on that missile that landed in the Polish farmland, killing 2 people yesterday. Initially, we thought it was a Russian missile. Poland and NATO have confirmed it's likely to come from Ukraine. President Zelensky says no, that's not the case. There may have been an accident. Where are we up to, and what do you make of it all?
Well, it does show how easy it would be for this conflict to spill over. And one of the ways Putin could escalate is by striking, say, an arms dump headed for Ukraine in Poland. But it's pretty clear that this, at the very least, was not an intentional Russian strike. What the Americans and the Poles seemed to think was that this was a defence missile from Ukraine, which hit a Russian missile and, was pushed off course as a result and fell into Poland. So that's the provisional judgment. On the other hand, the Ukrainians are very insistent that it was not one of their missiles. So it's clear, I think, that Russia didn't intend to escalate the war by doing this. It's unclear yet whether, it was indeed a Ukrainian missile. And even if it was, they're not at fault because they're certainly entitled to try to send up missiles to intercept Russian missiles raining down on their city, killing their civilians and destroying their infrastructure.
What did you make of the exchange between Xi Jinping and Justin Trudeau? Terse words. I think we've got a little bit we can play. Let's have a listen.
Everything we discuss is leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate. And that's not how the way the conversation was conducted.
Greg, ostensibly it was about Trudeau reportedly leaking a conversation between himself and Xi. I'm not often in Xi's corner, but I don't mind him having a go at Justin Trudeau. How does someone like Trudeau handle it?
Well, look, I think Trudeau handled it pretty well. He stood his ground. He didn't have a nervous breakdown. And so, China has brought us out of the doghouse. They got Canada in the doghouse. It's a very honourable place to be. Japan spent nearly a decade there. South Korea has been there, Germany and Britain. The great thing is not to lose your nerve. I think Xi Jinping is complaining that he was misreported in the press about a private conversation he had with Trudeau. How astonishing that one leader should, overinterpret the words of another. And I don't think Xi expected that his informal exchange with Trudeau there was going to be captured on film. I love it when the Chinese are embarrassed by the workings of democracy. Look, I'm not a big fan of Trudeau's, but I think on all this stuff, he's been quite sensible.
Yeah, I thought it was a domestic political play because Trudeau had tried to get a meeting with Xi, didn't get one. Everybody else seemed to get one. I suspect that played out badly for him at home. So they had an informal pull aside. For people at home, that's not a structured meeting. That's just literally a corridor conversation. And I think Trudeau big-noted himself by putting it back into the media at home to make up for the fact he didn't have a formal meeting. And I think that just then caused him the issues we've just played out there. But I could be wrong. He's not the sharpest tool in the box, so anything could have happened with Justin Trudeau. Give us your sense. We've had, obviously, ASEAN and G20. Now they're headed for APEC. How's it all played out? Give us the bird's eye view.
Well, I think China has decided that the tone of its wolf warrior diplomacy is not helping its national interest. So it's had a very important meeting with Joe Biden, not to establish a constructive relationship, but to put a floor under the relationship of competition. And they've had a good meeting with Anthony Albanese, essentially for the same reason. I think, Peter, I'd say to you honestly, I call it as I see it, the chips fall where they may. I think this has been a triumphant week for Albanese, absolutely triumphant. He has given the Chinese absolutely nothing. He has not backed down on a single issue of Australia's national interest. AUKUS, the Quad, intimacy with the United States, political interference legislation, all the rest of it, the whole kit and caboodle, complete strategic continuity, and he has secured his meeting with Xi Jinping. Now, I think the fact the meeting took place has much more to do with calculations in Beijing than it has to do with anything that we did. But I'm so pleased. Imagine if Labor had abandoned the Quad or abandoned AUKUS, how pathetic this meeting would now have been. Instead of which I think Albo's done everything right. The Quad first, the Japanese Joint Security Declaration second, and he's willing to be civil with the Chinese if they're willing to be civil with us. So I couldn't ask really. Probably my continued praise of him is very damaging for poor old Albo, but I couldn't ask for a better performance really.
We like that you call it as you say it. Just quickly before we go, MH17, 8 years ago, shot down. We expect there'll be a verdict in The Hague. What can we expect?
Well, I assume it'll confirm the previous determinations. I mean, it's improper, I suppose, to prejudge. They'll judge the guilt or innocence of these people who've been fingered as being perpetrators, and I don't think there's any doubt that it was Russian supplied and Russian sponsored, fired by pro-Russian militias in Ukraine. I guess that's what we'll get. But it's tempting fate to forecast any legal verdict, and I respect the Dutch courts. But I'd be very surprised if it overturned our existing understanding of the situation.
Greg Sheridan, thank you as always.